Always, Paul said, again, I say rejoice. Now, we're going to be looking at actually Joseph. But before we start, I'm always amazed when I discover once again how God, when He created us, did this amazing miracle within our bodies, which sometimes we forget or we want to take credit for, which He was thinking of these things. He tells us, take every thought captive, but actually gives us the ability to do it. To set up, I don't know, there's these two gray things in our foreheads called the amygdala. And if you're not familiar with these, the amygdala does a couple of things. One thing it does, it actually has us react without thinking. Like if a car's heading right for us, we don't think, oh, there's a car heading right for me. It's going to hit me, so I better get out of the way. We just get out of the way. Or if you have a parent with a small child who just starts falling, the parent will just react and grab the child without thinking. This is part of what this thing does in our brain. What it also does is it keeps us at a fear or fight type thing, flight or fight type thing, and it can get us anxious. It's a thing that in our brain, like every time we see a mole, we think, oh, it's cancer. It does that too. But it keeps us at a heightened sense of issues. And if we stay at that heightened sense, we will wear ourselves out and it will not go well for us. We'll just stress ourselves out of our minds. So what God does, He actually gives us tranquilizers that we don't have to buy over the counter. They're in our bodies. It's dopamine and serotonin that helps calm us down. The fascinating thing with this is because when God tells us to rejoice in Him always, again I say rejoice, He's going to give us the ability to rejoice in Him no matter what the situation is like. And at times we think it's going to require a miracle, and God says, no, I have designed your bodies to handle this. If you're with me and walking with me, I'm going to take care of that for you. I made you to handle these situations where you can rejoice in tough situations, but only when you're walking with me. And this is part of, like, when we come to the Lord, while we get salvation, we get eternal life. But God says, yeah, but I'm also going to have you have life into life to the fullest, and I'm going to give you the ability to do it. And when we look at this, say, well, how is this done? And, well, I think there's some wonderful examples in the Bible. I'm going to go with Joseph today. Now, Joseph, this is Joseph from the Old Testament, not the father of Jesus, but the son of Jacob. The whole story of Joseph, I believe it starts in chapter 30 of Genesis and goes to chapter 50 of Genesis, but I'm not going to be reading all of that. I'll just give you a synopsis of Joseph. So Joseph is basically, he fears his father would know better. Jacob was favored by his mother, Esau by his father, and we saw that made a huge mess, and that's a whole nother sermon. But what does Jacob do? He favors Joseph. Joseph, there's 12 brothers, and Jacob favors them. And this causes a big disruption. This is where we get sibling rivalry. The brothers are so upset that they decide they want to kill Joseph. Before they kill Joseph, Joseph has a vision where God lets Joseph know, your brothers will bow down before you one day, so will the nation. And so Joseph is not very bright, and he tells his brothers this vision he has, which just ticks off his brothers. And so he said, well, let's kill him. And we're out in the field, as they see him coming, walking towards them, here's this troublemaker, let's kill him. And one of the brothers is like, hey, let's not kill him, as he throws him in a ditch. Let's sell him into slavery. And they think this is a great idea. So they sell him into slavery. Now Jacob was well off. It's a well-off family. He goes from being a well-off family to being sold into slavery. They take his coat, they rip it up, they put in his blood, his brothers do, and tell his dad Joseph has been killed by an animal. So as far as his father knows, his son is dead. There's no reason his father would be looking for him. Joseph is taken into slavery. And that's where the real fun begins. Now, as I get into the next section, Kristen had heard a message by Voddie Baucham, who said, God calls us to two things, and only two: surrender and faith. And Voddie says, well, take a second, because you're going to say, no. He calls us to obedience too. And Voddie says, no. If you surrender and you have faith, obedience comes out of that. But it takes surrender to get to obedience. So it's a result, obedience is a result of surrender and faith. And we're about to see this in Joseph. What also is fascinating, in the brain, I was talking to a psychologist about this. When we're stressed out, when the amygdala is going off, we're only using the front of our brain, nothing else. And that's why when you're stressed out, you tend to make bad decisions. You're only using one part of your brain. The psychologist says they have discovered what will set off the rest of your brain to get into action and get away from all the stress is when you serve others, it ignites the rest of the brain. Now you're out of the front lobe and you're to all the rest of your brain, and now you can be effective. God's designed this. But the problem is when we're stressing out, the only person we care about is ourselves. And as long as we sit about ourselves, the rest of the brain never gets ignited, and we don't care about anyone else. And so the mess we continue to stay in. But it's amazing that serving will do that. Of course, what did Jesus say? I came to serve, not to be served. And he says, if you're a follower of me, you serve. Because you're being like Jesus, who is in us. And if he's in us, he's going to be pushing that in us. And now we're about to see the effect when that happens through Joseph. He has decided to surrender to God, be faithful to God, and to serve. So Joseph gets sold into Potiphar's house. Potiphar is a very wealthy man, very powerful, and Joseph can sit there whining and complaining about how unfair his life is, but instead, he starts serving Potiphar. After a period of time, Potiphar looks at him and says, hey, this guy's something special, and puts him in charge of his whole household. From slave to now the head of Potiphar's house. He served. He didn't whine. He didn't complain. How unfair he is. How terrible his brothers were. He doesn't concentrate on that. He's igniting the whole brain that God has given him. And so he's serving. But then what happens? Potiphar's wife wants to be with Joseph. Joseph's a very handsome man. We're told that, like David. Very handsome guy. And she wants to be with him. But Joseph has surrendered to God. Has been faithful to God, and he's going to honor Potiphar, so he says no to the wife. Now, he could have easily said, well, Potiphar, you sold me into slavery. You bought me. How dare you not set me free? So, yes, I'm going to do this with your wife to get back at you. But he doesn't do that. He stays loyal to God, and for that loyalty to God, what happens? She accuses him of attacking her. So Potiphar's wife tells him, his wife goes to the official, said, listen, he attacked me. He tried to do terrible things to me. Of course, they're not going to believe a slave, so now Joseph is in prison. So he's gone from a head of a house, from his father's house to the head of another house to prison. And while in prison, one day, the Pharaoh's butler and baker, or baker and cupbearer, show up. And they have a dream, and they can't interpret it. And Joseph hears about it. Joseph says, well, let me interpret the dream for you. Here's what's happening. He looks at the baker and says, I'm sorry for you, but today you're going to be executed. Pharaoh's going to come down. You're going to be executed. Get everything in order. It's over for you. He goes to the cupbearer. Well, actually, it's good news for you. Today, Pharaoh's going to come down here, free you from prison, put him back into his household, and you're going to serve him again as the cupbearer. And that's what happens. Baker is killed. Cupbearer is put back in the household. And before the cupbearer leaves, he tells Joseph, thank you so much. I will never forget you. You know, your words are so wise. This is great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And when he leaves, we get to Genesis 40:23. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Joseph has a light at the end of the tunnel, and it ends up being an oncoming train. And so once again, Joseph has a choice. I sit here, whine, moan, complain. I've been faithful to God. I have been good to God. And I'm in jail. Things aren't fair. They're not right. Joseph is in a perfect place to say, I do believe in God, but has he forgotten me? Hebrews 1:1-3, we see, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he spoke to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, Through him also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. In Colossians 1:17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Basically, verses is telling us Jesus keeps the whole world together. He hasn't forgotten about us. Joseph has not been forgotten about. He does not forget us. But Joseph could go there. But what does Joseph do? He is faithful, he has surrendered, and he serves. And in this moment, as he serves, he becomes like the head convict in the jail. The warden notices him, puts him in charge of all the other convicts. Instead of whining and complaining, he's able to engage his whole brain that God has given him, that he created, so he can get out of this pity party, this whining, this moaning, this groaning, and actually make a kingdom difference. And then the day comes. Pharaoh has a dream. No one can interpret the dream. There's these 7 calves who get really eat and they get really heavy, and then there's these 7 other calves who are really skinny and scrawny, but they eat the really fat calves, the fat cows. He's like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And at this moment, the cupbearer says, oh yeah, there's a guy in prison 2 years ago who interpreted my dream. He can probably interpret your dream. So Pharaoh said, well, bring him to me. And so they have to wash Joseph up, and they have to shave him, this says, and bring him before the king, or Pharaoh. And he comes to Pharaoh, and he tells Pharaoh what the dream means. He says, you're going to have 7 years of plenty, lots and lots of food. And then you're going to have 7 years of severe famine. And what's going to happen is that severe famine is going to last so long, it will deplete every resource you have. And it'll be a terrible time. So what you need to do is find a wise person to actually take the food you have during the 7 years of plenty, save it so you'll have plenty of food in the 7 years that are famine. So find a wise person to do that. And in Genesis 41, 37, 39, it says, this proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all these things, there is none so discerning and wise as you. And Joseph ends up being second in command of all of Egypt. Only the Pharaoh has more power than him. He goes from his father's house into a pit, into slavery, into Potiphar's house, into prison, into running Egypt and saving much of the world through the vision that God gave him. And then Pharaoh has him in control. As I read the story and I'm thinking of it, we hit hard times, we hit difficult times, and we have trouble seeing past the circumstance. Joseph was always seeing more. He always saw more. He saw that nothing was impossible to God. He knew God was sovereign and in control. Now, I should make an understanding here. Sometimes we have a mess in our life because we created it. The difference is with Joseph, he did not create any of this mess. It was put upon him. We create messes in our life and we blame God. And the issue is we end up in our messes longer than we need to be in our messes because we do not want to make the changes God has told us to make. And because we will not make the changes God has told us to make, we stay there, but somehow we're blaming God, where God's saying, I'm giving you the avenue out, but you're choosing to stay there. People say, well, my finances are terrible. Well, you're terrible with your money. You created that mess, and somehow you want God to make it better. He doesn't work that way. You got to learn how to be good with it. Your relationships are terrible. Well, one thing is, you're not a good husband or you're not a good wife. You're too selfish. It's too much about you, so you're making a mess. Or you pick lousy people to be with, and you're making the mess. And God says, I have a path for you to take to make it better. But you don't want it. But yet you're blaming me. This is your doing, not mine. And I give you the exit ramp that it will get better. So we can't confuse the one where life just happens and the one where we make it happen. Joseph is in the realm of life happens and things go sideways. And this whole thing of rejoice in the Lord always as we surrender, as we have faith, and as we serve. It's amazing how God will make us even-keeled to handle it. Kristen, just found out her mother was going to have 2 stents put in her heart, and it turned into quadruple bypass surgery she needs now. So Kristen said, I got to get a plane. I have to get up north. I have to take care of my dad during this. And her sister lives next door and helps out, but her daughter just had a baby, so her sister says, no, you got to take care of your granddaughter and your daughter. I got mom. And so Kristen's just running now, doing this. It's great because when she was home and she heard about this, she was stressing out. And as soon as she went to serve her mom and dad, everything changed. All of a sudden, it wasn't how nervous and upset she was. How do I help mom? How do I help dad? How do I help in this situation? And that's what she went and did. And so she'll be there for about 10 to 12 days helping out the mom and dad. Abandoning me here in Georgia. But what's interesting, too, is we're there to help, to keep it centered. For Kristen, I'm actually this person who keeps her centered. I told her, you're going to only be there for this amount of time, then you're coming home. And she says, well, they'll still need me. I said, no. You got to get back home. You have to recover. And after you recover, you can go back out. But you need a time to refresh, to renew, rejuvenate, so you can go help again. And so God puts us in these places where you can just use the front of your brain and make a lot of bad choices or ignite the whole brain. And I just always think it's fascinating that God designed this. This is not luck. I need a miracle. And God's like, no, not really. You don't really need the miracle. Let's just use your brain the way I designed it. And it works best when you're walking with me. It works beautifully. And I just find it fascinating. Like, man, Lord, you give us the ability to do these things just by walking with you. Or we can spend our life whining, complaining, moaning and groaning on how unfair life is. Saying I like it, and I was excited to see my son has used it. Life isn't fair. No. Fair is where you buy cotton candy and pigs win ribbons. That's a fair. This life isn't about fair. If it is, then we all go to hell. That's fair. It's like I heard R.C. Sproul was being asked questions, and someone had asked him a question of, you say God is patient, slow to anger, abounding in love, which he is. He said, so when Adam and Eve messed up in the garden, why did he treat them so severely? And R.C. says, severely? Severely. He said, okay, let's visit this. God gives them the Garden of Eden. It is perfect. There is no sin. It is paradise. And they can do anything they want in the garden, eat from any tree except one. Don't touch that tree. But your life will be full. It'll be wonderful. There will be no sin. There will be no issues. I've given you paradise. And so they go eat from the tree that they're told not to eat from. This is their doing. Satan might have tempted them, but it was their doing. And so they eat from the tree. And God says, if you eat from that tree, you will surely die. I like how R.C. brought this in. He said, now we think, well, he didn't kill them. He says, R.C., excuse me, death came in to roll through the tree. He says, but yet, I still believe, he was serious when he said, I will take your life. He said, but he chose not to take their life. He takes their life, it's all over, and God says, I can restart again now. Let's do this differently. But he doesn't take the life. He allows them to live. He makes clothes for them. The first seamstress is God. They take fig leaves, God makes clothes and gives it to them. And it tells them, well, here's life's going to be. Now, you're going to live here. You're going to have to work harder. Childbirth is going to get more painful. But you're still going to be able to produce. You're going to be able to have a family. You still get to have a relationship with me. I'm still going to commune with you. I'm going to be there for you. But because you made a decision, which I told you not to, there's ramifications for that. And R.C. said, severe? That's pretty gracious and kind. Severe, he said, if we were in God's place, odds are it would have been a much worse outcome for them. That was gracious and that was kind, what God did for his creation. He said, in our life, we'll think, why doesn't God do more? Why doesn't he do this? And God's like, I'm being kind of kind and gracious and merciful. And if you'll just do it my way, if you will surrender, if you'll walk in faith, you will serve, you're going to find out things go extremely better in your life. Matter of fact, when Joseph is there and he sees his brothers and he forgives his brothers, he forgives Potiphar's wife. You know, he's now second in control, man. He could have done anything he wanted. He does not get retribution. And then Joseph, later on, his father Jacob dies. And now the brothers are still nervous. Here's where the brothers didn't quite know God well enough, because they're thinking, now that Dad's dead, Joseph will kill us. No, years have passed. They still don't understand. Joseph serves God, not man. And when he says he forgives you, he means he forgives you. But they're afraid Joseph will kill them, so they go to the brother. And I'm pleading with him, bowing before him. And Joseph responds, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. No, he comforted them and he spoke kindly to them because he surrendered to God. He has faith and he serves. How it changed his heart. No revenge, no payback. He realized much has been given to him. In turn, much he will give to those around him. Joseph kept God in the middle of his circumstance. He didn't know why it was happening. He didn't understand why it was happening, but he knew that God was sovereign and God was in control. Acts 2:23 and 24 tells us, the man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge. And you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross. But God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for death to keep its hold on him. Everyone thought Jesus' life was over, but it was just getting started for us. In the message, God says, look at my son. Look what happened to him and look at the results. Just walk with me. Today we're going to be ending with It Is Well With My Soul. And a lot of you know the story of Horatio Spatafore, where his family, he was involved with the Great Chicago Fire, and he sent his family to Europe. And when the ship was on the way to Europe, it got hit by a vessel, and his 4 children died. His 4 daughters died, and his wife is the only one who survived. And she sent a message to him, basically telling him, "I alone survived. What do I do?" And Horatio, when he went over to see to join his wife on the ship, they said, "No, this is the place where the ship went down." It was in this place that he wrote, "It is well with my soul." And that's a beautiful story, but a lot of people don't know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to like to say. They could have spent the rest of their life complaining, and no one would have said anything. He lost all 4 of his children. I lost one, and I can't imagine the pain of losing all your children at the same time. How overwhelming that had to be. He lost them all. Just he and his wife. But what does he do? Instead of complaining and how unfair God is, how terrible life is, we're told that he moved to Jerusalem to form a Christian society designed to minister to the needs of all people. He who had lost much chose to reach out to the needs of others. And he and his wife stayed in Jerusalem to help those in need. The group he started, the small group turned into a large house outside the city walls. The house became a hostel, then it became a hotel. It says it still stands today. It still serves as a display location for those words written by a grief-stricken man on a storm-tossed sea. It is well with my soul. And I see people like Joseph, and I see people like Horatio, who had surrendered all, had faith, and served, and how it changed them. In that beautiful hymn, he wrote, though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and has shed his own blood for my soul. One writer said, it is well with my soul. May we so trust in that providence of God that we can say the same always, no matter the circumstance. And God has designed us to be able to do that very thing. He started with Jesus. He gave us Jesus Christ, who laid it down for us. Christ, who is the example of, in your circumstance, whine and complain, only see the worst, or cling to the Father. Lord, we thank you for that you've let us know about Joseph. Thank you that you let us know about Paul. Let's think about these people who have loved you so desperately and served you so well, that thousands of years later, they're still impacting our life. We thank you for your son and the price he paid, who led the example of what it means to be able to rejoice in you always, no matter what's happening. That you don't abandon us, you're always with us. We praise you for that. In Jesus' name, amen.